Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome back to Global PropTech Online. For this afternoon, we have a great roundtable session scheduled for you guys. We've got the IBPDI, the International Building Performance and Data Initiative, with some founding members, Rebekka Ruppel from Palm Plus, Andrew Knight from RIX, and Tobias Decker from Building Minds. They'll be having the roundtable discussion with you guys today. It should be very exciting, and I'm going to hand it over to Rebekka now to take it away.
Thank you, Derek, and welcome from our side. We are really happy to introduce you to our new initiative. I'm here with Andrew and Tobias. I'm starting now with a quick introduction, and then we go into details. So my name is Rebekka Ruppel. I'm from Palm Plus. We are a management consultancy. And one of our focus topics is the digital transformation. In this industry, we are only focusing on the real estate market, and we see that the huge issue in this market is that everyone is working with different data, and we're always coming to the point that we need to develop like new structures and a data model for each of our customers. And this is why I'm really happy that we have this initiative to develop a common data model for this industry. Handing over to Andrew for a short introduction.
Thanks, Rebekka. It's good to be with everybody this afternoon. I'm Andrew Knight from the RICS, the World Standard Setting and Professional Body for the Built Environment. I lead all our work on data standards and technology and data and the effects that has on the profession. And to echo Rebekka's words, we really do need to get some consistency around data. So very glad to be involved in this initiative.
Yes, welcome from my side, from Berlin. My name is Tobias Decker. I'm leading the product organization at Building Minds, which is a startup developing a data platform for the real estate industry. Before I joined Building Minds, I worked for SAP for many years, also being responsible for real estate applications. So my entire career, it has been around real estate and digitization. And therefore I also experienced firsthand that such a standard is really necessary to accelerate the digitization in the real estate industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let us start show you a bit more about IBPDI. At first, I'm sorry for this name. It's a bit complicated, but if you use it a lot, you get used to it. International Building Performance and Data Initiative. Now it's becoming more clear what it's all about. So we are developing a building performance and data standard here. And why are we doing that? So we are living in, I already mentioned it, we have a complex market with really strange or not unified data structures. So our market is fragmented because of its owners. So only in the commercial real estate market, we have a lot of different owners of buildings with a different perspective on the building. So one is more maybe investment and revenue orientated. The other one is more in the usage. So like for company use or whatever. And then there are, of course, even a lot of private owners, even in the commercial real estate market, even more, of course, in the residential real estate market. And even if we are speaking only of the investors, then there are a lot of different perspectives like funds, insurance, pension funds, and so on, with always a quite different angle on the real estate, and this makes it very much complicated. And then we have a market which is specific because it touches a lot of other industries, and this is why it's influenced by multiple mega trends, of course, sustainability, urbanization, but a lot of others, industry 4.0. So it's always touched by a lot of trends, and it's getting shifted in different direction, and this is not easy to handle. And then together with the fact that we are working with a lot of other, besides the owners, with a lot of other stakeholders, tenants, service providers, and so on, it's quite a complicated and fragmented market. And the next part, or the main challenge that we want to address, is the ununified data. So we every company works with a lot of systems which all have like another data lake or data structure, and this is really difficult to connect between those systems, and the data there is very ununified. And then the third part, so we're happy to have Andrew on board. This is why it is not really missing standards. So we have a lot of standards, and it's good that we have a lot of associations and initiatives that are already developing a lot of standards here. You see some of the logos, and then we have RICS, but what is missing is somehow that we don't have the consolidation of those standards along the whole life cycle of the building, and even on an international level. So those are the main challenges that we want to address here. On the one hand, the fragmented market with ununified data. On the other hand, the not really integrated and consolidated standards already. And our vision here is really clear. We want the real estate industry to speak the same data language, that we can collaborate in a better way together, that we can exchange data, and that we don't lose any more time on developing always for every use case another data structure and another data model, and that we become more agile, and that we then can adapt even some fancy technologies. We're always speaking about AI and so on, but if we don't have the databases for it, we could never apply such technologies. So this is our main vision here, not starting by zero, but by consolidating and combining relevant and existing standards to really get the push into this industry, for getting them to speak the same data language. And this is basically where we started, or what is our overall structure. So we are this IBPDI. We founded an association here, and we deliver mainly two things. So we have, on the one hand, with our strong partner RICS, they deliver us KPIs and already existing standards. They're even working on a standard really focused on the building operations, and we are using this together for creating a common data model for real estate. And we are working this common data model, and Tobias will get into that later in his part. Is based on the Microsoft approach. So Microsoft invented the common data model for other industries and already integrated it in other industries, and we want to use this approach and apply it on the real estate market, so that we can deliver this common data model for real estate. And what is really important here, it's founded this initiation by those logos that you see there, but we want to have it as an open standard. We want to publish it freely on GitHub. We will share the link afterwards, and we want to work together on it, and it shouldn't be a closed thing here. So this means, summed up for this introduction, we want, our main goals is to get a lot of more transparency in the market, to really break up the silos. We don't want like several data models for each use case anymore. We want to get better together, collaborate better together, and we want to always have the focus on the whole life cycle. So as I said, there are standards really specific for each phase of the life cycle, and we want to have the full life cycle approach. And what is really, really important for us is that we are in hashtag IRL in real life. So it's not a theoretical model. We are working together closely with technology partners, Building Minds, Microsoft, and others, so that we can really apply this model to the real world and ensure that this is not only a new nice white paper, but that we can really apply that. Yeah, this was a short introduction to IBPDI in general and the common data model. We will go later into more details on the first results, but I would like Andrew to share his insights. Why do we need those standards, and why do we need this common data model approach?
Thanks, Rebekka. Good afternoon, everybody, again. Once again, Andrew Knight from the RICS. As I said, I lead our work around data and technology, the effects that has on standards, on ethics and governance. I've been with RICS for many years now, almost 10 years, and been in the IT industry for a long, long time, old enough to remember punch cards, if anybody can remember those things. So I've seen the IT industry evolve in a tremendous way, but we still have a number of challenges to bring the benefits of IT to the real estate world. Next slide, please, Rebekka. So for any of you on the call who are not really aware of our RICS, we are a global standard setting and professional body with offices right across the world. It's important to emphasize, I think, that the depth and breadth of what our profession does and thus how relevant data is. Our members work across the globe to measure, report and assure data. And obviously, increasingly, that data will be held in a digital form. And aside from the particular role of architects or civil engineers in designing the built world, our members are involved in every part of that property life cycle. And I know Rebekka touched on the importance of a data model reflecting that life cycle, but our members, you can see the numbers there, they work around land acquisition, planning, construction, the operation of buildings, brokerage, valuation, end of life, fire safety, both in the residential property sector, the commercial sector, but also infrastructure as well, which is an incredibly important asset type for the built world. So a very wide range of members across the world, working almost entirely across the full real estate life cycle. And as I said, data will increasingly be in a digital form, and it's incredibly important that that data is held in a way that can be trusted by all the people who will consume it, and that it will flow around the ecosystem more easily. Next slide, please, Rebekka. Oh, there we go. So I think to echo the words that Rebekka very clearly articulated earlier on, real estate data, I think, is probably not an exaggeration to say, is in a pretty bad state in many respects. Many items of data are still unstructured. They're held in different silos. Rebekka mentioned the whole range of stakeholders that we all know are involved in the various property asset classes with very different views of data, very different use cases that they see. And quite often it's very hard to understand where the data came from, how it was collected, that provenance, that lineage. So there is a huge journey that the industry needs to go on to make sure we do have this consistency, this ability to exchange, have data produced on an interoperable basis, and break down, as well as some technical issues, I think some behavioral issues around why it makes sense to share data more freely. There are clearly issues around GDPR and commercial sensitivity, but I think it's important that people realize that sharing data does have huge value. And increasingly, we obviously need a common view of what that data model looks like to drive this interoperability. But as Rebekka says, we have a richness of standards in the world already. So what this initiative is driving to do is not create yet another standard, but drive that convergence, try and get more commonality about both existing international standards and standards that have been developed within jurisdictions or by particular proprietary systems, for example. And what's a really, really important point is that this common data model will be freely available in the public domain. We need to make sure that this is accessible both from a technical perspective for all stakeholders, but also is freely available. And as it evolves, we make sure that it reflects what the market wants and needs to model and understand real estate right across that life cycle. What it will do is clearly unlock an awful lot of use cases, an awful lot of innovation, whether that's using machine learning, business process automation, to make sure that we can really begin to use data in a really powerful way to make the built environment better for the people who have to live, work and play in it. And as I say, there'll be multiple use cases that will actually be ignited by the fact that we have this ability to have a common understanding of the data, to be able to share, to be able to pull different data sources together. So the sky is the limit, to use the phrase, I think, in terms of the areas we can look at. So if you think of brokerage, the ability for people to have better due diligence data when they're actually buying or renting property, the ability to manage materials within the construction, clearly a whole range of that operational phase where people often forget that most of the cost of real estate is in that operational phase, not the construction phase. So huge opportunities to manage real estate more cleverly there and deliver the kind of outcomes that people want. And clearly in these challenging days, to manage issues of air quality and performance and livability of property. And if we can get this common data model used and embedded, it means we can link to huge other data sets around the geospatial world. And we do need this accurate data to support the whole issue of sustainability, net zero or carbon neutral. And what we want to bring to this is really linking in our existing standards around these measurements and assurance, around valuation, around even something as fundamental as how big a building. So if we're looking at ratios of performance, that we can be sure that we're looking at the right number of square meters to have that denominator to say, yes, we're looking at the right kind of performance measures here for the right size of building. And also that we get good costing information to really understand how our buildings are delivering cost-effective operational and construction metrics. And also, as I mentioned, in terms of brokerage, buying and selling, rental, that we can do that due diligence, that people can buy and exchange property and have that full picture, that full trusted data room. And what we're also making sure with this initiative is that we also link into that world of BIM, that we make sure that when we produce these models, they can also link into those very rich geometric data that we have on buildings that are increasingly being used and constructed with a BIM model to underpin it. And let's not forget that governance, that ethical. Let's make sure that we embed this in a way that people can trust the data, that they can understand the data that's being shared, to make sure we balance those concerns of commercial and privacy concerns with the huge benefits we get from sharing data and how that can feed into regional city planning. So huge opportunities here. And so much of it is about building this convergence, consistency, interoperability. We need to make sure real estate steps up and becomes a much more mature industry in terms of its ability to handle data. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew. And yeah, I'm happy to have Tobias to give some insights on the common data model approach in general, and then the technical integration even of our common data model for real estate.
Very good. Yeah, where does the common data model come from? So it's a concept that was developed in an open data initiative, and this open data initiative was founded between Microsoft, SAP, and Adobe in 2018. And they agreed to have one common language to exchange data and information in the CRM space, so customer relationship management. And that is actually what inspired us to do something similar for the real estate industry, to create an open data initiative with a strange name, IBPDI. But the idea is the same, that this standard should be openly available. It should not be a standard that we develop from scratch, but we bring together the best of the different worlds. So standards that are already available, but also entities or artifacts that are already available in ERP systems like Microsoft Dynamics. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we can reuse a lot of definitions that are available out there. And as I said, one result of this ODI is that this generic concept, this common data model concept, that we now apply within our initiative. And to emphasize that it's not limited to Microsoft technology. So the result of it are JSON files that you can also use in other technologies and other databases. So you don't have to be a Microsoft customer to make use of this common data model definition. Next slide. And Microsoft already implemented this concept not only in the CRM space, but also in other industries, in automotive, in healthcare, and manufacturing. And then Microsoft worked together with partners. And then, yeah, we are doing something similar now for the real estate industry. And this also allows to access the data from different tools, from Microsoft tools, but also from other applications. Okay. And Rebekka mentioned the hashtag IRL in real life. And that's also one goal of this initiative, that we actually test, validate if this theoretical data model can also be implemented in real life. And that's what we are doing for most of the data clusters also within our data platform at Building Minds. So we use the common data model as a target structure that we can use to map data from different sources. So a lot of companies in the industry not only have one, but many ERP systems. They might have different CFM or IWMS systems. Part of their data is also, or part of their processes are outsourced to external service provider, and companies lost their data ownership and they would like to bring back that data. And for that, we use the common data model as one target. And with the common data model, we are then able to create one data foundation that we can use to democratize the data, make it available for all the different roles within the company, from the owner to the portfolio asset manager, property facility manager, and then also covering the entire life cycle. But this is just one side of the coin. On the other hand, we also want to build smart algorithms, machine learning use cases on top of that data foundation, and without the data foundation, it's actually not possible to apply these new technologies. Okay. And the target or the road that we are following is described in this visualization, which I borrowed from EY or the MIT for real estate, but it describes quite nice the journey that we are going, and also the journey that a lot of companies in the industry are following. So the first step is to create this data foundation, and then with our common data model, we are enabling that. And then the next steps are to create first insights on management level, on operational level. Based on the data, we can also predict what will happen, but then also our platform will become proactive and will prescribe actions that need to be taken in order to better manage parts of the portfolio or better manage buildings. And then the goal is to actually automate decisions and then also automate processes. And one perfect area to apply this approach, Andrew already mentioned it, is sustainability. So that's also a strong focus for us, where a lot of data needs to be collected from different data sources, from smart meters, from Excel spreadsheets, from invoices, from utility providers. It needs to be normalized, it needs to be harmonized. And then based on this data foundation, we can also create insights, do risk assessments, calculate the carbon risk within the portfolio, and then also come up with algorithms to derive necessary modernization measures in order to reduce the energy consumption or the CO2 emissions for a single building or for an entire portfolio. Okay, and how that looks like in the Building Minds platform is shown here. Maybe we can start a quick video. And this would be the portfolio view, where we can drill down within the different levels of the portfolio. We'll create insights in different perspectives for financial figures or financial reporting, but as I just mentioned, also for energy consumption and CO2 emissions. And by applying these data models and also validating them with customer data and in projects, we make sure that this is not a theoretical exercise that we are doing, but really a data model that can be deployed in real life and practice. And yeah, I cannot mention it often enough. It's not bound to any software vendor, so this concept can be applied within different industries. And it's an enabler also to decarbonize real estate portfolios and the real estate industry. Okay, next slide. And maybe that's another perspective, especially also for startups, PropTechs in the industry. So a lot of startups and PropTechs, and then also we are sometimes struggling to integrate into the system landscapes of our customers, and to accelerate this integration, to ease the integration. This common data model can also be used, and with having a common data model or a defined data structure, it's much easier to apply and develop new apps, new use cases on top. And that's also something that we are testing on top of our platform, to easily create low-code, but also pro-code applications on top of the model. And this way, we also validate that the model can be implemented in real life. Okay, that's a quick insight how we make sure that the data model can also be used and be implemented. And that's what we do at Building Minds.
Thank you very much. I think it's fascinating to see how data models can get reality and really be used on a platform like yours. Unfortunately, I have to turn back to more theoretical insights now, and I want to show you a bit about the common data model for real estate, where we stand right now, what we developed until now. And yeah, and I invite you, of course, to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to read it parallelly and maybe even answer it immediately. So this is to Andrew and Tobias. Please support me here by reading and answering all the questions. So it would be great to have like more an interactive section here. Yeah, the common data model for real estate, the main structure you can see on this slide. So as Tobias mentioned, we are building it on the Microsoft approach, and the Microsoft approach is basically that they divide the industries in several clusters, and in these clusters they define entities with their specific attributes and define relationships between those entities in order to conduct a lot of use cases here. And we tried the same for the real estate industry, and as a main and core cluster, we defined the digital building twin. There are a lot of different definitions of the digital building twin. For us, it's really the digital model or the data model of the physical building. That means architectural structure, technical equipment, building components, but all other data related to the value chain, the tenant relationship, owner relationship, and so on, is then clustered in the clusters around the digital building twin. But it's of course the main cluster because every data in this industry is related in some way to the building or the portfolio. Then you can see the building and portfolio life cycle. So what we basically did is applying a standard process landscape here for the selection of these clusters, starting from investment management over construction, transaction, up until the usage phase, so user and customer experience. And we always structure the data where they come up and not where they are used. So, for example, of course, for the portfolio asset management process, it's important to know everything about tenant vacancy, tenant fluctuation, everything like that. But we structure those data in the property management since this is the right cluster there. And then what you see on the bottom, it's the foundation. We call it like this. Those are more like vertical data clusters. Like financial, order management, project management, which can be then part of those processes along the building and portfolio life cycles. But in order to reduce redundancies here, we decided to give them extra clusters. And we have, for example, in financials, we have cost, and we define for one time how we structure cost, and then we can apply it for construction cost as for every other life cycle costs here. Then on the left-hand side, you see the market data. We know that market data in this industry is not really structured, also because a lot of data or a lot of business models are based on this intransparency, but we want to have a look into it, and we know that a lot of PropTechs do so as well. So here we are even very happy to work together with other PropTechs that are really focused on this part. And on the right-hand side, you see energy and resources. So Tobias showed it. It's one of the main drivers, I guess, in this industry right now. And so we decided to give them the energy consumption and CO2 emission and so on its own cluster. It could be a sub-cluster maybe of the facility management, but I think it's so important that we decided to have it in an own cluster. And yeah, we said it a lot, but I want to repeat it. So this is a huge scope because we are looking at the whole building and portfolio life cycle, but we don't want to start at zero. So what we are basically doing is we are starting with one cluster, and the first thing that we do is what are the relevant standards here that are already existing on an international and national level. When I speak about national level, of course, we are more looking into the European market than maybe in Asian or American market, but we always look what is there on an international basis and what on the national. And then decide together on the primary standard and enhance it then with other standards together. And I will show you how we did it for the digital building twin, for example, and come to the first results. So we started with the digital building twin as it's the main or core cluster, and we need to have the structure right away so that we can develop all the other clusters around it. And we said, okay, we need like somehow the structure of the digital building twin, and then we need to have a look at the specification of all these entities in this structure for coming to a common data model for this digital building twin. And for the structure, we had a look into several standards. The main standards that we looked into, you see here. So of course, there's IFC, Building Smart, which is a really relevant standard for us, not only in the BIM environment, but even for having a common data model of a digital building twin along the whole life cycle. Had a look in ISO class, and even in this ISO 81346, and we decided to apply for the structure, the IFC, as a common structure, and having the ISO norm for the specification of the technical equipment and building components. And then for the specification, so that means really the specific attributes for all these entities that we developed. We chose then to use CFM Connect and COBE there, so that we, together with this standards, we are, let's say, at an 80% at least version of this digital building twin, and this is mainly how it's worked. So we are taking a lot of different standards to put it together. And only a quick overview how the main structure, so we don't have any time to go really much more into detail, but I want to show you the main structure of the digital building twin. We have here the IFC structure, as I said, applied. So we have site, building, floor, and space. The site is not really in the IFC, but we decided to put it in. So in IFC, site is land, but we, out of the more operative and commercial view, we need to connect building and lands together on a site, like a campus or whatever. So we integrated it, and it's based on several building and lands, building a floor and floor of spaces. And then we have like non-hierarchy entities, such as area measurement, which can then be applied on site, building, floor, and space level. And we have the unit, which is a bit special entity, can be a selection of more than one space or even floors. So I can have maybe a floor is more horizontal collection of spaces. Unit can even be a vertical collection. So we needed this in order to have more flexibility. And then we have the product, as it is in IFC. It's like a collection here of technical equipment and building components. And as I said, we then use the classification of this ISO norm to go deeper in that. So this is the first overview. Of course, if you have questions, ask it. This is then mainly how it looks like when we have this data model. I only have time to share a quick screenshot here. So that means we have the relationships, we have the entities, we defined every, for us relevant, or in the first step relevant attributes here. And as you can see here, we have this product. So we decided for every technical equipment and building component, we have like some generic attributes, and then for each of those classifications aligning with the ISO norm, we have then the specific attributes for each of these product classes. So this was the first intro to the digital building twin. See that there are no questions. I hope this is not a bad sign, but so feel free to jump in and ask something. And then related to what Tobias showed before, I'd like to give you an overview of this energy and resources, also because it's like a nice way to show how these clusters work together. So for the energy and resources, we started with the same approach as for the digital building twin. We had a look on what are the standards that we can apply. We have here on the left-hand side the greenhouse gas protocols that on the one hand defined a lot of methodologies how to calculate things, but then even benchmarks in order to help support these calculations. And on the right-hand side, you see the CREM, a carbon risk monitor tool, which is from an European project, and where you can calculate your carbon risk. And I think this is the main applied standards here in this area, and we wanted to base our model on that. And this mainly looks like this. It's a bit more chaotic than the one from the digital building twin. What I wanted to show is like that there are always connections between the clusters I showed before. So when we have this model, we are starting with the digital building twin again. So we have, for example, a building or area measurement taken of this digital building twin. So we're using these entities here. We have from the organization management the address or the location, and then in the cluster of energy and resources, we have, based on the building or area and all this information, we have the operational measurement, so the actual measurement of energy consumption and so on. And then we have like entities of GHG emission factors, climate corrections, we can apply sustainability targets and sustainability indicators, and they are all related to this operational management, but even based on the specific location and so on. And so then we come to the finance clusters, where we have this standardized structure for prices and costs. And there you can see how all those clusters work together, that some or most of the things we define in one specific cluster, but then we can have it by having those relationships, we can use it all together as one. And I think this is the new approach, even to have like this whole life cycle overview and not building like data models only on specific use cases here. You can see again, I brought you with me a quick screenshot. It's maybe a bit not so easy to understand right away, but it's the same thing. So we have here the specific attributes figured out for each of the entities that I showed you in the part before, and with all the relationships between them. Yeah, and then we are already nearly at the end. So I already told you we have an association. Maybe a quick overview, how do we work together and how you can join, because we really want you to join. So we have, of course, an executive board here, as we are an official association, but we are working in working groups. So we want to get some speed in it. We want to really working on it hands-on, and this is why we decided to have this sprint process applied. That means we are building working groups along the clusters that I showed you before. For each of those working groups, we have like a core working group, which produces results like conceptual and physical data models. They share it with the whole working group, and then we have bi-weekly or monthly, based on the topic, working groups or review meetings, where we then have in 1 hour discussions about feedback, questions, additions, and so on. So this is the first requirement that we would ask you. We want your time. So if you want to be part of it, we really want to work in this working groups. That means everyone needs to be prepared so that we can use this hour in order to have really a result here. And then between those sprints, we always work in the feedback, and yeah, we'll get some speed since we will have this working group cycles or review cycles bi-weekly or monthly. And yeah, and we are looking there for contributors. This is one role of the active members, that be part of this working group and really contribute with knowledge, input, maybe even data and everything, so that we can get this going. And then we are looking for supporters on the other hand. Those are even like other associations such as RICS or Building Smart or whatever, that say, yes, we are believing in this initiative, in this IBPDI initiative, and we're believing that we are in the need of a common data model, and we support it with our network. Yeah, this is it. And I would really like you to join us. Yeah, and we have, I think, some more minutes for some questions.
There's also one question from Derek in the chat.
Oh.
So what are your thoughts on the structural aspect of semantic modeling for creating a digital twin? I'm thinking of standards like Brick Schema or Project Haystack. Yeah, that's also something that we are looking into. So we are not trying to replace these standards. And there's at the moment also a new evolution. It's called Digital Twin Definition Language, which was developed also by Microsoft and Willow, which is based on real estate core. So it's mainly focusing on the inside of the building. We have a much broader scope. And we are currently trying to make sure that we are compatible and that we can link these standards into our overarching common data model. Are there other questions in the chat? Oh, there's Derek.
Hello. Please, attendees, I've seen some of you out there. I know that you're there. If you have some questions or comments from the panelists, please, even if it's just to say, hey, I'd like to hear some more information about what you're doing, or to join the association, or to ask a question, please write it down in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. Yeah. And while we're going through this, I guess, with one question that might be on the minds of some of the attendees, and I think you started to reach on it towards the end, is what's the stage of, I guess, implementation in terms of pilot projects, or have you started to roll out the data model, the common data model platform?
So, like I've shown in my slot, we are trying to validate and implement it in real world projects, and that's what we are doing with customers from the corporate real estate industry. So BASF, the chemical companies, is one of them, with a huge portfolio of around 10,000 buildings. Mm-hmm. Globally, but also in the area of sustainability, that we are working with institutional real estate companies and have already implemented the digital twin and the energy and resource data cluster, and also proven that the data model is working. As Rebekka said, we had our working group meetings within the last month, and there we also received a lot additional feedback how we could extend the models, and that's what we are currently implementing. But yeah, it's already been implemented with customers and already proven that it's working, at least for the data clusters that we have already covered. But did you also talk about the roadmap of the clusters, Rebekka? Maybe it would be worth to also mention what are the next steps or what are the next clusters?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, we started with digital building, twin, and energy and resources, and now we want to focus on the portfolio asset management cluster. So we are starting this next week actually. And I think so, and we are starting with the first brainstorming session because I think on the one hand, portfolio asset management has a lot of definitions, and there are a lot of things that maybe in one company is in the asset management, and others, for others, it's already property management or whatever. So I think it makes sense to have a first brainstorming session on what topics do we focus, what are the main KPIs with the specific data models behind those KPIs. So we will start with this next week, and we think that we will have a lot of interfaces to the other clusters as well. So when we again speak about like tenant relationships, of course it's important for a portfolio and asset manager, but we will place it in the property management cluster, and from there we will go through other clusters with a focus on portfolio asset management, property management, and facility management, because for this phase, we are really much focused on the operational phase, and we want to develop this clusters in the next month. And we'll be really fast on publishing things. So our approach is not to get to 100% and then publish it, but we will always publish it along the way. And this is why we are so happy to have Building Minds as there, that we can always and at every point test the model, so that then we can publish it right away.
Mm-hmm. And in looking at assets and property management, are there particular sectors that you're looking at, such as corporate real estate, retail, or even something like logistics? Because earlier, one of our keynote speakers was Robert Heckelaar from Prologis, and he was talking about the warehouse industry and how there is kind of a move towards gathering more data and creating these models of the warehouses to improve their efficiency, both for them and then also for their clients. And it seems like this is something that would be quite interesting to the direction that they're going in.
It's also mainly driven by the priorities of the participants of the initiative. At the moment, we have not yet a strong focus on logistics, for example, but we also have requests from healthcare industries, hospitals, etc. But join the initiative and then also influence the the scope and the priorities of our common data model. So we would be happy to also cover logistics and the areas.
Perfect. No, that sounds great. Looking here, there's no one in attendance who has sent through any questions through. So I think that we can, if it's okay with you guys, end the session and maybe take it over to the networking portion of the site. If you look on your left-hand side here, there is a networking where you can go in and meet some of the other attendees and have conversations, talk about this or talk about other things that you're working on. I would like to thank our panelists here. Thank you so much, Rebekka, for leading us through the talk. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Tobias. And good luck with the association and the initiative. And all attendees, please look into this more and sign up for the association.